Howdy guys, it's Lord Nick and I'm bringing you another League of Legends related video. This is going to be the next episode of the Dangerous Game podcast. I would say the number here, but I've kind of forgotten at this point because it's been so long since I did the last one. I do want to apologize for taking such a long hiatus again. Yeah, but it's kind of becoming a habit, unfortunately. The sporadic nature of which my life decides to downward spiral and go uphill, and it's a mess. Anyhow, let's get to League of Legends. The whole reason this podcast exists, ever. So preseason is upon us, people. If you don't know that, you have been not playing for the last couple weeks. Interesting things that have come out: Clash, New Conqueror. We have Aphelios coming out later this week. But the big things I want to talk about in this podcast are going to be the idea of how to approach this new upcoming emerging meta, how to approach the Conqueror Keystone, and the biggest thing about what Clash brings to League of Legends. So let's get started here. We're going to start off with the emerging meta here. So a lot of people are hypothesizing what this meta is going to be like, and at the beginning of this season, or this preseason at the moment, it is definitely looking more like an assassin meta than the tank meta people were really predicting. I think a big part of that is not understanding how the new Keystone Conqueror actually works, and how tanks could actually be a legitimate build path, but just not with the runes you thought maybe would be the ones you want to use. So let's kind of delve into that a little bit more. So when I first heard about the preseason and heard about all the giant amounts of changes and read the patch notes, everybody's kind of predicting that it's going to be a tank meta. That was just kind of the way things were being foretold. Aftershock's getting a buff. There's going to be a lot of nerfs across the board to a lot of really powerful bruiser champions. So the dragons are going to be more contested, so you're going to be grouping up more, and tanks are better in groups. So there's this idea that the tank meta was just going to resurge because of certain aspects of the game. Now, a big part of the reason the tank meta hasn't resurged nearly as dominantly as people thought it would. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't there, but it's just not nearly the force that everybody thought it was going to be. And the big reason behind this is going to be because the Conqueror Keystone is one of the big ones. Why would you play a tank if you could just use a Conqueror abuser who uses a crap ton of attack speed and just abuses the healing power of Conqueror? Legitimate reason to think about that. That is actually a thought. Next up was the idea that dragons are of high importance, and tank junglers are not known for their ability to solo dragons to a certain large degree outside of maybe Nunu or somebody who has innate lot of healing in their kit. Somebody like Olaf, somebody like Trundle, somebody like Nunu are going to be better for securing these dragons. Now, that being said, these are high contested objectives now. The way that it's changed is that you fight around that bot lane. You fight around mid and bot. Top lane is back to being an island. Rift Herald changes really nerfed Rift Herald and made it much more of a nuisance than it is an actual threat. So, next patch they're trying to buff it, but during this patch at least, there's not a threat towards the top side of it. Unless your top laner is massively feeding or your top laner is a carry potential top laner, which is not as common, you're not going to need to be near top. Top is just an island again. It is left alone to being whoever wins it wins it. Their effect on the game would be made more if they have a tank or somebody who has global pressure. So GP, Shen are both going to be more, top picks again. Not like they weren't before, but they're moving back into the meta again because it's no longer revolving around these carry tops. It's back to, all right, who can globally pressure from top and still, just not feed, and you're going to see these safer picks coming out in the top lane. Note that in the jungle, you're seeing a lot more Olafs, a lot more individuals who can abuse Conqueror. Olaf, Nocturne, anybody that abuses either lethality, I should rephrase that, lethality or Conqueror, or both, because these are the things that are powerful right now. Now, a lot of people started off this preseason by just going straight into the damage Olaf build, which is a Korean path of doing it, where you go into the warrior enchantment. But I've noticed here in North America, I've seen a lot of Cinderhulk, and I think they came to the same realization as me, is that actually Cinderhulk is so much better for Conqueror users. And the biggest reason why is not because, you can't get more damage from the warrior, but you don't give as much crap about the damage you're getting from the warrior. You care about the damage Conqueror's giving you, because that's what you're healing off of. So you want to keep that Conqueror alive as long as possible. So if you have Cinderhulk, FYI, it keeps you in battle, even if you're not able to attack. So even if you're stunned, they can't stun lock you long enough for it to just go away. Cinderhulk's going to tick away at them. So if you manage to unstun and are still alive, and you're like Olaf, if they manage to CC the Olaf, like even though you have an ulti to prevent it, sometimes you do get CC'd, you know, you have a Cinderhulk keeping it alive, making you harder to kill, and as soon as you come up, you press that W, and you're just not gonna die. You're gonna be low health, and you're gonna just steamroll people. Like, there's so much stupidness to that, to the combination between the two of those. Not because Cinderhulk procs the Conqueror, but it keeps it from degrading. So that's huge, and that's something that you gotta have to kind of think about, which will bring us into the Conqueror idea here in a minute. But I do want to finish up the talk about the meta shifting. So the meta is shifting to this high pace, high speed jungle, skirmishing jungle, and it also revolves around teams being able to not necessarily win their lanes, but win the pressure in the lane so they can rotate up and secure objectives as a team. So you need your bot lane to have the pressure there, or else the enemy bot lane is going to have to give up all of their CS. Now, note, if they have to give up CS and they still manage to get the kills and the dragon, then you've done something horribly wrong. But the general idea is as soon as you've lost pressure in the lane, you can't contest the dragon because you're going to lose a lot of XP, a lot of gold. And that's legitimately true. Laners are much more important on level than the junglers are now. You know, it used to be how fast can your jungler get to higher level than the enemy jungler and get smite. If you have a very high ganking jungler, maybe that's still true, but otherwise it's about clear speed, and even then, most of the guys are pretty good at clear speed, and you keep pretty even in CS most of the game, unless you're good at counter jungling, which is another big aspect of how the jungle's changed. But you just, you don't gain as much levels. You can clear the jungle 3 times over, and the top laner has still got a 2 level lead on you. Like, it's just insane how little the jungle actually gains XP from their camps. You have to clear them so fast and so frequently that ganking is becoming less and less of a thing. It's about skirmishing and fighting for other people's camps so that you can take their high priority camps, like the chickens or Gromp, and keep them at a lower level and gain a gold advantage. And that's like the biggest way that I've really seen this season go is you steal their camps, you get the pressure away from the jungler, force their jungler to back, and then you go and solo dragon. Like, these are things that I've noticed of how this game is adapting. Now, that being said, you don't have to immediately go into meta champions. That's the biggest thing I wanted to get on here about. When you're having a new meta emerge, it's going to be easy to see, okay, these are the OP things in this meta. Now, the reason they're OP is because these are the things that people have solved. These are the people that, learned how to play. You not necessarily learned what their weaknesses are, but you've learned, okay, they're really strong in these matters. Now, a lot of people don't break down what are some of the weaknesses of these champions. So, for instance, with Olaf, he's in a very good place right now. He has a good amount of CC with his Q because he slows a decent amount and does a crap ton of damage if he gets into brawling with you, and he can't be CC'd once he has his ulti. So, where's the downside? Where's the downside to this champion? Well, the big downside to this champion is the fact that if he has to chase you, he's not getting damage on you. He's not getting healing on you. And sure, his axe could potentially get you and slow you, but here's a big thing. Ezreal or anybody with a dash really just outkites an Olaf. Like, you can kite an Olaf pretty successfully. On top of that, because he can't be CC'd, he's going to run past your team. We're in a very volatilely heavy damage meta. That's not good. There is a massive downside to that, is that, oh, he can just run past my team. So what is the job of the tank? The tank has usually been, okay, let me peel this Olaf, or peel the people from diving my backline. You can't peel an Olaf. So what do? You put your tankiest person up front, have everybody else turn on the Olaf, and your tankiest person uses their CC to prevent any of Olaf's team from coming to support him. That is a massive, massive downside to Olaf. That is an easy way to breaking this idea that Olaf is this unbeatable PogChamp. Now, note, if he turns on your tank, that could be a different story, because if he's trying to take your big tank out of the commission, that's how they really have to focus it. So it's a matter of focus, but if, the general Olaf player right now, I've noticed, loves to just dive into that backline. So, okay, I'm not going to focus on trying to peel the Olaf, because I can't, it's not going to work. Let me just zone off the rest of his team so he's in a 1v4. I'm in a 1v4 too, but I'm a tank. I survive longer. I have CC. My whole job is to just absorb damage, so I'm doing my job. His job is to kill my backline, which if he can't because there's too many people doing damage to him, then they've lost the pressure here. I can survive longer than he can. So that brings me to the next thing, which is Conqueror. So note, there's a lot of people that are afraid of this keystone. It's very easily abused by range champions right now. It's very easily abused by melee champions, and soon it will be a melee-only rune because they're going to be nerfing it so much for range champions. It's just not going to be nearly as viable. It's not that it's going to be bad. It's just not good. Again, it's the creep idea that ranged is so valuable that they can't get a rune that's anywhere near as powerful as that for melee champions, which to an extent is true, exception that there are a lot of melee champions with hypermobility, so they should just be considered a range champion at that point. That's a story for another day of my hatred of mobility creep that Riot just doesn't understand in their game. But if we're looking at this rune, what is making this rune so overpowered? So if we brought up stats for this rune, for instance, the current way that this rune plays out, there's a lot of hit and miss coming from how things work here. Everybody thinks that this rune is just super OP because of the healing that it grants you. It gives you 15% healing of the damage caused by the Conqueror Keystone. Now, I don't believe that is the case. I don't believe Conqueror is actually that busted as some people think it is right now. Now, note, it is broken. It is a broken ability, and it's hard to explain because it is broken, but it's not broken for the reason that everybody keeps saying so. Everybody's like, that healing from it is just nuts, and 15% of your damage really isn't all that much, unless you're gaining a crap ton of damage from it, and that's where I think the Conqueror is a bit busted. So stacking up to 10 times to a max of 20 to 50 extra frickin' adaptive damage. Like, you're getting 20 to 50 extra damage from the adaptive force. It grants 2 to 5 adaptive force, which converts to a ridiculous amount of damage. And it stacks from melee champions, gain 2 stacks per basic attack on hit. Damage over time effects and ongoing sources of damage can grant 1 stack every 5 seconds. Note, also abilities stack it for 2, unless it's a dot damage. So there's some interesting aspects behind this rune. The 15% healing is really nice, but it's only from the damage dealt to champions via the Conqueror rune. So the way you balance this is not necessarily taking some of that healing down. Now, you could just take that healing away, and this rune would just be an okay rune. Like, it's good. It's still good. It's not, like, bad. But that 15% healing is kind of nuts. But you could also see this rune as being used by basically any melee champion. What's to say that it only has to be used by somebody with a massive amount of attack speed? Sure, that's a way that you could potentially break it. But the rune itself actually allies a lot to a lot of different tanks. And this is kind of bringing into, merging these two ideas of looking at the meta differently and looking at the Conqueror rune itself. So the reason I bring this up is I saw this rune and I read what it did, and I thought to myself, wow, that's really stupid on somebody who has really good scaling with ability power. Or AD, that's a tank that you necessarily don't build those things on because, guess what, they're a tank. You want them to be tanky. And your only real option as a tank right now is, can you use Aftershock? And Aftershock's really good. It's back to being pretty solid, or Grasp of the Undying for that matter. But if your opponent doesn't really have that much HP, Grasp is cool, but it's not like end-all be-all amazing. And Aftershock's pretty good, it's just not, it's not the end-all, again, it's not end-all be-all amazing. It gives you pretty good resistances, it makes you really tanky for a couple seconds, but, in comparison, oh cool, I've become extra tanky, but you're gaining extra damage. Where's the nullification here, really? In a standoff fight, an Aftershock tank's not going to beat a Conqueror abusing Olaf or Yasuo. But a tank with Conqueror can stand up to them pretty well, as long as they're not, massive amounts of items ahead. So that's a big look at it that I haven't had a lot of people looking at was, yes, okay, cool. It's one thing to abuse a rune for being busted. It's another thing for finding out another niche use for it to help you kind of counteract it to a small degree. So, an example of a tank that I've found that works with this rune exceptionally well is Maokai. Uh, Maokai is a heal drain tank. The whole premise of Maokai is, oh, you use a lot of abilities, which guess what? A lot of assassins are about spamming abilities. Akali does it, Zed does it, everybody does that. So tanks are generally good into them. Maokai is really good into those type of individuals. He's good into a Yasuo. If that Yasuo is not super, super far ahead, you know, he can't 1v1 a Maokai that's in the same item differential as him. And there are some spikes that Yasuo can definitely fight you, but for the most part, he really can't if you guys are pretty evenly matched on items. And the reason why is Maokai has natural healing in his kit. You're building stuff that naturally increases your healing, and you're building stuff that reduces their healing. So if I have, for instance, two items, which the two items that I generally go first on Maokai are Sunfire Cape and a Spirit Visage. Just almost every game, those are the first two I go. I generally go Ninja Tabby for my boots because pretty much everybody does basic attacks and stuff, and getting more armor is really nice. So these would be my three items versus Yasuo. Let's say the Yasuo has his boots. So he has Berserkers, he has Phantom Dancer, he has IE. Now that's a scary Yasuo, but as a Maokai, I'm not actually terrified of him. To be honest, I have a decent amount of armor, I reduce a lot of his damage, and even though he has healing, I have more healing because my kit innately has more healing in it. So all in all, I think I can 1v1 this Yasuo. It comes down to a skill matchup at that point, but even if I can't kill him, I'm very good at nullifying him from doing damage to the rest of my team. I have a crap ton of lockdown. His mobility is meant to, allow him to reposition and go into fights from different angles. But if I could position my CC properly, I can prevent him from doing a lot of his damage. I can prevent him from being able to do things. And the Conqueror just allows me to gain more damage. So I start putting more damage back on him. On top of that, it gives me increased healing, which is huge on Maokai. With my current build, I'm already healing quite a bit, but then I'm healing even more because of the Spirit Visage. So, like, all in all, Maokai just, with a Spirit Visage and Conquer, Maokai becomes really, really hard to kill. And the more abilities you are spamming, like a Yasuo Q, the more frequently my passive comes back up, which means I'm just going to heal more, which just means it's even harder to kill me. So, this rune is actually really good on him. And another big reason why this rune is really good on him is it gives you adaptive force. So, if I stack it up to 10, I'm getting a decent chunk of AP, which Maokai actually scales pretty well off of AP. His Q and his W actually have decent AP scaling. Now, his W not so much as his Q, but his Q does have a very good AP scaling. On top of that, in the late game, if, for instance, I'm going Transcendence, I gain a decent amount of adaptive force from Transcendence, which is really good. So on top of that, in the late game, I'm sitting on about 50 to 60 AP on a tank. That's a big extra chunk of damage that people are not expecting a tank to have. Now, I can change my runes slightly. If I have Transcendence and instead of Water Walking, which is what I've been going for Jungle Maokai, if you change that to Gathering Storm, in the mid to late game, you're going to be sitting on, with Transcendence and Gathering Storm, you're going to have about that 50 to 60 AP. Then plus the Conqueror stacks, you're going to be close to almost 100 AP. With my Q, I think I gain an extra 80 AP from that, like 80 damage onto my Q, which just means my 3-second Q that I'm able to spam pretty frequently is going to be chunking for a lot more than you think it would as a tank. I'm going to have Sunfire doing damage around. My autos are going to be doing better. All in all, I'm just going to be doing an unrespectable amount of damage as a tank. And there's been many games as Maokai that I've just seen myself do the second most damage on a team as full tank Maokai. Like, it's a very useful way of looking at the meta and looking at this rune that seems overpowered on bruisers because bruisers can abuse it to heal an ungodly amount. But if you pair it with somebody who has natural healing, you pair it with somebody that can use this in a way that people aren't expecting it, you're going to gain an edge just because people aren't going to know what to do about it. And that's a big part of what the preseason meta is, and that's a big part of evolving and emerging metas like this. Learn to find something that's a niche for you, that's something you know how to play, and finding a way to make the things that you're comfortable with better. Not necessarily broken, but they're broken in your hands because you know how the mechanics of that champion works. You know how the you understand what you're gaining by doing this really off meta type of thing. Um, Now, lastly, folks, there was the fact that I wanted to talk about Clash. So Clash is really interesting to me, and part of the things that I got to learn on Maokai, I got to learn about Conquer and stuff, has come from Clash, and the ability to have that feeling of having a 5v5 team again is really nice. But having actual rewards for it is really, really nice. You know, they're not like super amazing awards, but they're enough that get me and my friends kind of excited to play it and have fun. And I think Clash is a very healthy thing that Riot should consider making a permanent game mode. You know, just like, oh, you can choose daily to do Clash tournaments if you want. You know, it's not like it makes them have to give out so many prizes. You know, make it so that it's like at the end of the week, however many Clash games you play, you get these amounts of rewards. So if you change how their prizing pool works, so it's not, you know, you get a prize on a daily basis, but it's based off of the accumulation of how your games go throughout the week. I think that you can really turn Clash into this permanent game mode that people really enjoy. You know, it's not any different than your primary game mode. It just changes how, okay, you're going against pre-made fives teams that people liked doing that in the past, but you're getting rewards from it, which incentivizes people to play it. On top of that, it incentivizes people to get better as teams, which then will incentivize people to get better at the game, which could start building up a better talent pool across different regions. It could start developing a more fun aspect to the game because there are people that will start playing this because of the fact that you just get to have fun with your friends and you get to earn something from it. You could start doing, they could start monetizing this in ways of like, hey, if you start buying these certain things for Clash, you start getting, kind of like a battle pass for Apex or some of those other games that have battle passes, more so than the current battle pass that Riot offers now, which is just for special quest events, which is neat. It's cool. It's an awesome idea, but if you did it with Clash, you could start doing it for, hey, your rewards for Clash get better. Like, you get to permanently keep these things that you have if you buy the Battle Pass or stuff like that. There's ways that they could do it, or there's ways of, like, hey, if you buy this now, you can have your team have a quote unquote skin. That basically, that skin just is the block of text. It puts like a tabard on your champion that has your team logo and your team name on it. That's not hard. It's a pretty easy code to write in, and it's a way that they can monetize it. And so your team gets to go around wearing their skin of your team, so people take pride in their team, people are taking pride in the game again, people are having fun. There's a lot of ways that Clash can really add some dynamic elements of combining competitiveness and the fun aspects of League, because it's not super serious. It's not like we're playing a Clash tournament to become the best Clash players in the world. Cool, you get bragging rights that your team won in Clash. That's really awesome, and you get these cool little rewards to put in game because your team won in Clash. So, what are ways that they can make it either more competitive or more fun? Would to then be just allowing it to be something that's a permanent standing game mode that's there all year round, all every day. And like I said, do those rewards at the end of the week. Maybe twice a year you do this thing where it's like people who have won X amount of Clash tournaments then get to get put into bigger bracket, and it's going to be this giant, massive pool, and whoever wins it gets this exclusive cool skin that we get to release, um, or something like that. Um, and then during that time, here's some extra Clash tournaments that you could sign up for. Like, you can only do X amount of Clash tournaments a day, right? Like, so say it's open week round, but you can only do like 5 Clash tournaments a day. So if you want to get extra, you can pay to do extra. Pay to play more. So at that point, it's pay to play. It's not pay to win, but it's pay to play. So there's that chance that people that are paying are just winning it more. But if your team just wins your 5 a day, like, okay, cool. Percentage wise, put it off of the percentage of games you win. Right? Like, oh, what is your win percentage? That guarantees you to the tournament. These are ways that Riot could do this so that, yeah, oh, cool. Yeah, there's people that are paying to play it more because they like to play this mode more, or they want the surprises at the end of the week more. Because they value those more than normal skins and stuff. Um, or they think that if I play more, I'm gonna have a higher win percentage, but if they're losing most of their games, they're still not going to make it into that giant Clash tournament at the end of the year. There's so much they could do with Clash that could add in a much more interesting dynamic, to add in more of an amateur scene for playing that. People, you'll start recognizing, maybe after a year or two of something like that, you'll start recognizing teams like, oh, that's the team that like took third last year in the giant Clash Brawl tournament thing. There's so many ways that they could change the identity that they're just now building for Clash. I know they're trying to go through a lot of testing phase for it, and it's kind of buggy for them. But I think like simplifying it to where it's a year-round game mode that doesn't just pop up every other week or whatever, like they're kind of planning to do right now, but you plan it to be a overall game mode that's static, that's always available, and then gives different pricing because of how often you play it, stuff like that. Could be a really interesting way to get the competitive nature of people back up, so people who want to be competitive don't have to just play ranked, they can play Clash, which allows maybe you have a Clash quote unquote rank, which is the tiers that they're doing right now. So as your team starts winning in a tier too often, you get moved to the next tier, stuff like that. That could be interesting, which would allow people to realize, oh look, we're against a lot of diamond solo queue players now, and even though we're all golds, we have a team dynamic that's so good that we have to play against these players. And maybe it starts encouraging people to play ranked more and start getting back into the idea of grinding. Like, I think that Clash can be a big motivational piece to incentivize the community to really gather around the competitive nature that is League, while still maintaining the fun nature that was what League of Legends was built off of, was this fun 5v5 brawl game that you could have with your friends. So, all in all, there's nothing bad to say about Clash. Literally, I had nothing but a good experience this time around. Even though my team, lost our first game in day one and then won the next two and took the losers bracket, and then the next day we stomped our game one and then lost our game two due to just some rough plays by me and other players on my team early on. We still had a lot of fun. And then afterwards, we had some talks about how we could improve, and we were looking forward to the next time we're going to group up and do this again. Like, it's a very interesting dynamic that it added to our friendship that I didn't think would be there. I didn't think that my hodgepodge of friends would want to group up and play League in this manner. And it turned out to just be a very positive and fun experience for us. And I really hope that Riot continues doing something like this forward, and I hope that they make it a permanent standing mode. It's one of those things that really brought a lot of enjoyment to me. And hopes that there's this idea that there's something more competitive that I can do without having to go out and find these competitive leagues nearby. So it doesn't cost me money. It's a really cool concept that I think that they could do a whole lot with, and I hope they do a whole lot with. Well, thank you again, guys, so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you who comes by and just checks out these videos. I love seeing any comments, and every time I see a comment, it makes my day feel a little bit better. So, I appreciate every one of you, and I hope to continue doing this more frequently now. I've had to really rebuild my love for League. I kind of put League on the back burner for a while there. I watched some of Worlds, not a whole lot of it. I was really more involved in some of my personal life aspects that I just never really focused back onto going back to video games. And then I started playing video games again with friends. Clash again really helped reignite it, and like my passion for League is being reignited through the love that I had through playing with friends and just the fun nature that I kind of had forgotten about from League. And I'm really hoping this season is going to be different for me. Maybe I'll make Diamond this year just because of the fact that I'm having more fun with the game again. That's a huge element for me, and I hope that's the case. And I hope to keep making more videos like this and other cool videos. Hey, maybe in the future I'm going to show you guys that, kind of quick guide to Maokai Conqueror Maokai, because I think that's a pretty fun build path that nobody's really touching that could go a long way. But thank you again, guys, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye now.